I woke up to 8 inches of fresh snow covering my driveway in Rapid City, South Dakota, and knew I had to get started early if I wanted to make it to work on time. The alarm clock read 6:45 in the morning, and I grabbed my coat, pulled on my boots, and headed outside with my snow shovel. The cold February air hit my face like a slap, but I was used to it after living here for 3 years. My name is William Warner, and I had moved into this quiet suburban neighborhood thinking it would be peaceful, but the HOA had other plans for me. I started shoveling at exactly 7 o'clock, scraping the metal edge of my shovel against the concrete driveway. The sound echoed through the quiet morning, but I figured everyone would understand. After all, people had jobs to get to, and the snow was not going to clear itself. I was about 15 minutes into my work when I saw her. Patricia Henderson, the HOA president, standing on her front porch 3 houses down in her bathrobe, arms crossed, glaring at me like I had just committed murder. I ignored her and kept shoveling. The snow was heavy and wet, the kind that makes your back ache after just a few scoops. My breath came out in white puffs as I worked my way down the driveway, tossing each shovelful onto the growing pile on my lawn. Then I heard the storm door slam shut, and I knew Patricia was coming over. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice shrill enough to wake up the entire block. "Excuse me, William." I stopped shoveling and turned to face her. She was marching across her yard in her slippers, completely unbothered by the snow soaking through them. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her face was red with anger. "Good morning, Patricia," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" she demanded, stopping at the edge of my property. 7:15, I replied, checking my watch. "Exactly. 7:15 in the morning. People are trying to sleep, and you are out here making all this racket with your shovel." I blinked at her, genuinely confused. "Patricia, I have to get to work. The snow needs to be cleared. The HOA has very clear rules about noise ordinances. You cannot make excessive noise before 8 in the morning on weekdays. It is right there in the covenant you signed when you bought this house." I leaned on my shovel, feeling my patience already wearing thin. "This is not excessive noise. This is necessary snow removal. I am not running a chainsaw or blasting music. I am shoveling my driveway." "The sound of that metal scraping is excessive," she insisted. "I can hear it from inside my house. You are disturbing the peace of this neighborhood." "Then close your windows," I suggested. Her eyes went wide, and her face turned an even deeper shade of red. "How dare you speak to me that way? I am the HOA president, and I am telling you that you are in violation of our community rules. Stop shoveling immediately, or I will be forced to take action." "What kind of action?" I asked, genuinely curious about how far she would take this. "I will call the police and report you for disturbing the peace." I laughed. I could not help it. The idea of someone calling the cops over shoveling snow was so absurd that it seemed like a joke. "You are going to call the police because I am clearing snow from my driveway?" "Yes, I am. And you will receive a fine from the HOA as well. Do what you need to do, Patricia. I have to get to work." I turned back to my shoveling, dismissing her entirely. She stood there for another moment, sputtering with rage before storming back to her house. I watched her go, shaking my head. This was not the first time Patricia had harassed me over something ridiculous. Last month, she had sent me a letter demanding I repaint my front door because the shade of blue was not approved, even though it matched 3 other houses on the block. Before that, she had threatened to fine me because my trash cans were visible from the street on a non-collection day. Never mind that I had just brought them in and was about to put them in the garage. I kept shoveling, figuring she was all talk. But 15 minutes later, I heard the sirens. An actual police car pulled up in front of my house, lights flashing. I stopped mid-scoop and watched as an officer stepped out of the vehicle. He was a tall guy, probably in his late 30s, with a tired expression on his face. "Morning," he said as he approached. "I am Officer Davis. Got a call about a noise complaint." "You are kidding," I said, though I knew he was not. "Wish I was. Lady 3 houses down said you were making excessive noise and violating community rules." He glanced at my half-shoveled driveway and the snow still falling lightly from the sky. "You have been out here shoveling?" "Yes, sir. Started at 7. I have to get to work and my car cannot get out until this is cleared." Officer Davis pulled out a small notebook. "What time did you start?" "Exactly 7 o'clock, he nodded, writing something down. "And what is the nature of the noise?" "Just the shovel on the pavement. That is it. No music, no power tools, just this." I held up my regular metal snow shovel. The officer looked at Patricia's house, where I could see her watching from behind her living room curtains. He sighed heavily. "All right, look. I am going to be straight with you. City ordinance says you cannot make excessive noise before 7 on weekdays. You started at 7, so you are within your legal rights. As for the HOA rules, that is a civil matter between you and your homeowners association. The police do not enforce HOA covenants." Relief washed over me. "So I am good to keep shoveling?" "Yes, you are. I will go talk to the complainant and let her know there is nothing we can do here." He flipped his notebook closed. "For what it is worth, I think calling the police over snow shoveling is a waste of everyone's time, but we have to respond to every call." "I appreciate you coming out and being reasonable about this," I said. "Just doing my job. Have a good day and stay warm out here." Officer Davis walked back to his car, but instead of leaving, he drove the short distance to Patricia's house. I watched as he went to her door. She came out immediately, still in her bathrobe, and I could see her gesturing wildly even from this distance. The conversation lasted about 5 minutes before the officer returned to his vehicle and drove away. I went back to shoveling, satisfied that I had won this round, but Patricia was not done. She came marching back over, her face now purple with rage. "That officer does not know what he is talking about," she yelled as she approached. "The HOA has the right to enforce our covenants and you are in violation. You will be receiving a formal letter of violation, and if you do not comply, you will be fined." "Patricia, the police just told you I am within my legal rights. What more do you want from me? I want you to respect the rules of this community. I want you to be a considerate neighbor. Is that too much to ask? I am being considerate. I am clearing my driveway so I can get to work, and so that my car is not blocking the street. That is what a responsible homeowner does. At 7 in the morning on a Tuesday, it is inconsiderate and rude." I set down my shovel and looked at her directly. "Patricia, I have lived here for 3 years. In that time, you have harassed me about my door color, my trash cans, the height of my grass, the type of mailbox I have, and now about shoveling snow. I follow every rule. I keep my property clean. I pay my HOA fees on time. But you seem to have made it your personal mission to make my life difficult. Why?" She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. For a moment, I thought she might actually give me an honest answer. Instead, she said, "I do not have to explain myself to you. I am the HOA president, and it is my job to ensure compliance with our community standards. Your job is to make this neighborhood better, not to harass your neighbors over nonsense. This conversation is over," she snapped. "Expect a letter in the mail." She turned on her heel and marched back to her house. I finished shoveling, my mood considerably darker than when I had started. I made it to work on time, but the incident stayed with me all day. I worked as an IT manager for a healthcare company in downtown Rapid City, and normally I could lose myself in the work. But today, I kept thinking about Patricia and her threats. When I got home that evening, there was already an envelope taped to my front door. Inside was a formal letter from the HOA, stating that I had violated Section 7.3 of the Community Covenants regarding noise restrictions. The fine was $250, payable within 30 days. If I did not pay, the amount would increase by $50 per month until resolved, and the HOA could place a lien on my property. I called my friend Marcus Chen, who was a real estate attorney. We had met in college and stayed close even though he lived in Sioux Falls now. I explained the situation to him over the phone. "Let me get this straight," Marcus said. "She called the cops on you for shoveling snow at 7 in the morning. The cops said you were fine, and now she is fining you anyway." "That is exactly what happened. And you have this in writing." "The fine letter." "Yes, I am looking at it right now." "Okay, first thing you need to do is request a copy of your HOA covenants and bylaws. Read through them carefully, especially the section on noise. Second, document everything. Times, dates, what was said, who was there. If she keeps harassing you, you might have grounds for a counterclaim." "A counterclaim for what?" "Harassment, selective enforcement, abuse of power." HOA boards have a lot of authority, but they cannot just make up rules or enforce them unfairly. If you can show a pattern of her targeting you while letting other residents slide, you have a case. I thanked Marcus and hung up. That night, I went through all my HOA paperwork, which I had stored in a filing cabinet in my office. The covenants were 60 pages of dense legal text, but I found Section 7.3. It stated that residents could not engage in activities that created excessive noise between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. on weekdays, and 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. on weekends. The examples given were loud music, construction work, and power tools. There was nothing about snow shoveling. I also found the section on fines. According to the bylaws, any violation had to be reviewed by the full HOA board, not just the president. The board consisted of 5 members, and a majority vote was required to issue a fine. Patricia had sent this letter on her own authority, which meant she had violated the HOA's own rules. I spent the next evening writing a detailed response letter. I cited the exact text of the covenant, pointed out that I had been shoveling after 7 a.m., noted that police had confirmed I was within legal rights, and highlighted that the fine had been issued without board approval. I sent copies to Patricia and to all 4 other board members, whose names and addresses were listed on the HOA website. 2 days later, I got a call from one of the board members, a man named Robert Thompson who lived on the other side of the neighborhood. "Mr. Warner, this is Robert Thompson from the HOA board. I received your letter regarding the fine issued by Patricia Henderson. Thank you for calling, Mr. Thompson. Please call me Robert. I want you to know that the rest of the board was not aware Patricia had issued this fine. She did not bring it to our attention or call for a vote, which is required under our bylaws. So the fine is not valid, correct? I have spoken with the other board members, and we are unanimous in our decision to void this fine. You will receive a letter to that effect within the next few days. I also want to apologize for the way this was handled. Patricia has been made aware that she overstepped her authority. I felt a wave of relief. I appreciate that, Robert. To be honest, this is not the first time Patricia has come after me over minor issues." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Could you elaborate on that?" I told him about the door color, the trash cans, the mailbox, and several other incidents. Robert listened without interrupting. "I see," he said finally. "This is troubling." The board's role is to maintain property values and ensure the community runs smoothly, not to harass homeowners. Would you be willing to provide written documentation of these incidents? Absolutely. Please send that to me directly. I think the board needs to have a serious conversation about Patricia's conduct. Over the next week, I compiled everything. I had saved all of Patricia's letters, emails, and even a few text messages. I included dates, times, and descriptions of our in-person encounters. When I sent the file to Robert, it was 15 pages long. The HOA board held an emergency meeting the following week. I was invited to attend and present my case. The meeting was held in the community center, a small building near the neighborhood park. All 5 board members were present. Patricia, Robert, and 3 others I did not know well, Susan Miller, James Park, and Deanna Rodriguez. Patricia looked furious when I walked in. "I do not see why this is necessary," she said before the meeting even started. "This is clearly a vendetta by a disgruntled homeowner who does not want to follow the rules." "Patricia, you will have your chance to speak," Robert said firmly. "Mr. Warner, please go ahead." I presented my case, walking through each incident and providing documentation. I kept my tone calm and factual, sticking to the evidence. When I finished, the room was silent. "Mrs. Henderson, do you dispute any of these facts?" Robert asked. Patricia crossed her arms. "I was doing my job." Every one of those letters was sent because Mr. Warner was in violation of our covenants. "But many of them were not violations," Susan Miller said, flipping through the papers. "His door color matches several other houses. His mailbox is a standard design that dozens of residents have. And the snow shoveling happened after 7 a.m., which is permitted. The spirit of the rule is to maintain peace and quiet in the morning," Patricia argued. "The spirit of the rule does not override the actual text," James Park said. "And even if there was a violation, you cannot issue fines unilaterally. That requires a board vote." Patricia's face was bright red. "I have been president of this HOA for 8 years. I have dedicated countless hours to keeping this neighborhood beautiful and maintaining property values. And this is the thanks I get, being questioned and undermined." "No one is questioning your dedication," Deanna Rodriguez said gently. "But we have to follow our own rules, just like we expect residents to follow them. You cannot selectively enforce covenants or issue fines without board approval." "This is ridiculous," Patricia snapped. "If you do not support me, then maybe I should resign." "Maybe you should," Robert said quietly. The room went completely silent. Patricia stared at him in shock. "What did you say?" I said maybe you should resign. "Patricia, you have done good work for this community over the years, but lately you have become overzealous. This is not the first complaint we have received about you, though it is the most documented. If you cannot follow the bylaws and treat all residents fairly, then perhaps it is time for someone else to take over." Patricia stood up, shaking with rage. "Fine. I quit. You can all figure this out on your own." She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the community center, slamming the door behind her. The remaining board members looked at each other awkwardly. "Well," Susan said, "I guess we need to elect a new president. They asked me to step out while they discussed next steps." I waited in the hallway for about 20 minutes before Robert came to get me. "Mr. Warner, the board has voted to formally apologize for the way you have been treated and to clear your record of all alleged violations. We have also elected a new president. I will be taking over that role." "Congratulations," I said. "Thank you. I promise you, things are going to run differently from now on. The HOA exists to serve the community, not to harass it." I left the meeting feeling vindicated but also a little sorry for Patricia. She had clearly taken her role too seriously and let power go to her head, but 8 years of service was still significant. For the next few weeks, things were quiet. I did not see Patricia around the neighborhood much. Her husband, a quiet man named Gerald, who I had only spoken to a handful of times, told me she was staying with her sister in Pierre for a while to clear her head. Then spring arrived, and with it came a new problem. I was out in my yard one Saturday in early April, planting some flowers along the front walkway. The weather was beautiful, sunny and in the mid-60s, perfect for gardening. I was on my knees digging in the dirt when a car pulled up in front of my house. I did not recognize it at first, but when Patricia stepped out, my heart sank. She looked different, thinner, tired, with dark circles under her eyes. She walked up to my property line but did not cross it. "William," she said. Her voice was quiet, lacking its usual edge. "Patricia." I stood up, brushing dirt off my knees. "I wanted to talk to you. Can I have a few minutes of your time?" I glanced at my half-planted flowers, then nodded. "Sure." She took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology. The way I treated you was wrong. I let my position go to my head, and I made your life harder than it needed to be. I am sorry. I had not been expecting this. I appreciate you saying that. I have had a lot of time to think over the past few weeks." My sister helped me see that I was using the HOA as a way to control things, because I felt like everything else in my life was out of control. My marriage is falling apart. My kids do not talk to me anymore, and I threw myself into being HOA president because it was something I could manage. But I took it too far. I did not know what to say. This was a side of Patricia I had never seen. "Anyway," she continued, "I am not asking you to forgive me or even to like me. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry and that I am working on being better. I have started seeing a therapist, and Gerald and I are doing counseling. I am trying to fix the things I broke." "That takes courage," I said. "I hope things work out for you, Patricia. I really do." Her eyes welled up with tears. "Thank you. That means more than you know." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Your flowers are going to look beautiful, by the way. That color is perfect for this time of year." I watched her drive away, feeling a strange mix of emotions. I had spent months viewing Patricia as an enemy, a petty tyrant who made my life miserable. But seeing her like this, vulnerable and apologetic, reminded me that everyone has their own struggles. Life in the neighborhood improved dramatically under Robert's leadership. He focused on real issues like organizing community events, maintaining common areas, and addressing safety concerns. There were no more harassment letters over minor aesthetic choices. The HOA became what it was supposed to be, a way to maintain property values and build community, not a tool for power-hungry busybodies. I saw Patricia around occasionally after that. She had moved back home, and she and Gerald seemed to be working things out. We were never friends, but we were cordial. She would wave when she saw me, and I would wave back. Once, she even complimented my lawn, which I took as a sign of real progress. The following winter, when the first big snowfall hit, I was out at 7 in the morning again with my shovel. I saw Patricia looking out her window, and for a moment I tensed up, waiting for her to come storming over. But she just smiled, gave me a small wave, and closed her curtains. I went back to shoveling, grateful that the war was finally over. But while Patricia had backed off, the story was not quite finished. About a month after that first snow, I received a strange letter in the mail. It was from a law firm in Sioux Falls, addressed to me and several other residents in the neighborhood. The letter informed us that Patricia Henderson was being sued by a former neighbor, a woman named Amanda Foster, for harassment and emotional distress. I called Marcus immediately. "Did you know about this?" "Know about what?" he asked. "Patricia is being sued by someone else in the neighborhood for harassment." No, I did not know about that, but I am not surprised. If she was treating you that way, she was probably doing it to others too. I found out more details from Robert at the next HOA meeting. Amanda Foster had lived in our neighborhood until about 6 months before I moved in. She had been involved in a lengthy dispute with Patricia over a fence she wanted to install in her backyard. Patricia had denied her request multiple times, citing vague aesthetic concerns, even though the fence met all the requirements in the covenants. The situation had escalated to the point where Patricia had sent Amanda threatening letters almost weekly, some containing personal attacks and accusations. Amanda had eventually sold her house and moved away, but the emotional toll had been significant. She had experienced anxiety and depression, which she attributed directly to Patricia's harassment. Now, with a new therapist and a supportive lawyer, she was seeking damages. Is the HOA being sued as well? I asked Robert. No, this is a personal lawsuit against Patricia. But it does not look good for the community. If this goes to trial, a lot of dirty laundry is going to be aired. The case moved slowly through the legal system. I was contacted by Amanda's lawyer and asked if I would be willing to provide a statement about my experiences with Patricia. I agreed, figuring that my documented evidence could help establish a pattern of behavior. I met with the lawyer, a sharp woman in her 50s named Helen Carter, at her office in Sioux Falls. I drove the hour and a half from Rapid City on a Tuesday afternoon, taking half a day off work. Mr. Warner, thank you for coming in, Helen said as she led me to a conference room. I have reviewed the documents you sent over, and they are very helpful. Can you walk me through your interactions with Mrs. Henderson? I spent the next 2 hours recounting everything: the door color, the trash cans, the mailbox, and of course, the snow shoveling incident. Helen took notes and asked clarifying questions. What I am seeing here is a clear pattern of targeted harassment, she said when I finished. Mrs. Henderson singled you out and subjected you to unreasonable scrutiny that she did not apply to other residents. That is exactly what she did to my client. Is this going to go to trial? I asked. I hope not. We are trying to reach a settlement. But if Mrs. Henderson refuses to acknowledge wrongdoing and offer reasonable compensation, then yes, we will take it to court. I left the meeting feeling drained. I had not wanted to get involved in legal drama, but I also felt that Amanda deserved justice. If Patricia had driven her out of her own home, that was serious. 2 months later, the case settled out of court. I never learned the exact terms, but Robert told me that Patricia had agreed to pay Amanda a significant sum and to sign a statement acknowledging her misconduct. As part of the settlement, Patricia also agreed to never seek a position on any HOA board again. I felt a sense of closure after that. The woman who had called the police on me for shoveling snow at 7 in the morning had finally faced real consequences for her behavior. It was not the dramatic courtroom showdown you see in movies, but it was justice nonetheless. Life continued. Spring turned to summer, and the neighborhood came alive with kids playing in the streets, families barbecuing in their backyards, and the smell of fresh cut grass. Robert organized a community cookout in July, and nearly every household attended. It was the first time I felt like I was actually part of a community, rather than just living in a collection of houses governed by arbitrary rules. I even started serving on an HOA subcommittee focused on neighborhood beautification. We worked on projects like planting trees in the common areas, organizing a community garden, and installing new playground equipment at the park. It was rewarding to be part of something positive, to help shape the neighborhood in a meaningful way. One evening in late August, I was sitting on my front porch with a beer, watching the sunset, when Gerald walked by with his dog. We had never really talked much, but he stopped at the edge of my lawn. "Mind if I join you for a minute?" he asked. "Not at all." I gestured to the other chair on my porch. He sat down, letting his dog lie at his feet. "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me for what?" "For how you handled everything with Patricia. You could have been vindictive, could have really gone after her. But you were fair, and when she came to apologize, you were kind. That meant a lot to her and to me." "I am glad things are better for you too," I said. "They are. We are still in counseling, but we are in a better place now. Patricia is different. She is working on herself, trying to figure out who she is beyond being HOA president. It has been hard, but good." "That takes real work. I respect that." Gerald nodded. "She made mistakes, big ones. But she is trying to make amends. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that we appreciate how you handled things." He stood up. "Have a good evening, William." "You too, Gerald." As he walked away, I thought about how strange life could be. A year ago, Patricia Henderson had been my nemesis, the bane of my suburban existence. Now she was a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when we let power and control consume us. But she was also a person trying to do better, and there was something admirable in that. The following winter brought more snow, as it always did in South Dakota. When the first big storm hit in November, I was ready. I set my alarm for 6:45, pulled on my boots and coat, and was outside shoveling by 7. The familiar scrape of metal on concrete echoed through the quiet morning, but this time, no one complained. No police showed up. No threatening letters appeared on my door. I finished shoveling and stood in my driveway for a moment, admiring my work. My breath came out in white clouds, and the cold nipped at my exposed skin, but I felt satisfied. This was my home, my property, and I was taking care of it the way a responsible homeowner should. As I turned to go inside, I noticed Robert walking his dog down the street. He waved at me, and I waved back. A few houses down, I saw Gerald loading his car for work. He gave me a thumbs up. Even Patricia, who I could see moving around in her kitchen through the window, looked out and offered a small smile. This was what community was supposed to feel like. Not rules for the sake of rules, not power struggles and petty grievances, but neighbors looking out for each other and respecting each other's space and rights. I went inside, made myself a cup of coffee, and got ready for work. As I drove out of the neighborhood that morning, I felt grateful. Grateful that I had stood up for myself. Grateful that the system had ultimately worked, and grateful that even someone like Patricia could change and grow. The HOA drama had been exhausting and frustrating, but it had also taught me important lessons. It taught me to document everything, to know my rights, and to not back down when I was being treated unfairly. It taught me that even organizations designed to help can become corrupt when the wrong people are in charge. And it taught me that people are complicated, that even your worst enemy might be fighting battles you know nothing about. As the months went on, I settled into a comfortable routine. Work was good, the neighborhood was peaceful, and I even started dating someone I met at the community cookout, a teacher named Allison Franklin who lived a few streets over. She was kind, funny, and had her own HOA horror stories from a previous neighborhood, which gave us plenty to bond over. One Saturday in March, I was helping Allison paint her living room when my phone rang. It was Robert. "William, sorry to bother you on the weekend," he said, "but we have a situation I thought you should know about." "What kind of situation?" "Patricia is moving. She and Gerald are selling their house and relocating to Arizona. She wanted me to pass along a message to you." "What message?" "She said to tell you thank you for giving her a second chance, even when she did not deserve it, and she hopes you will be happy here." I felt an unexpected wave of emotion. "Thanks for letting me know, Robert." No problem. Oh, and one more thing. The board is looking for a new member. You have been doing great work on the beautification committee. Any interest in stepping up to a full board position? I thought about it. A year ago, I would have laughed at the idea of voluntarily getting more involved with the HOA. But things were different now. The board was functioning the way it should, and I had ideas for how to make the neighborhood even better. Yeah, I said. I think I would like that. Excellent. We will vote you in at the next meeting. Welcome aboard. After I hung up, Allison asked me what that was all about. I explained the whole saga to her, from the snow shoveling incident to Patricia's resignation to the lawsuit to this news that she was moving away. Wow, Allison said when I finished. That is quite a story. Tell me about it. I never thought something as simple as shoveling snow could lead to all that. But you handled it right. You stood up for yourself without being cruel. You let her apologize and move on. That says a lot about your character. I just did not want to spend my life fighting with my neighbors. Life is too short for that. We went back to painting, but I kept thinking about everything that had happened. In a weird way, I was grateful for the whole experience. It had forced me to learn about my rights, to get involved in my community, and to see people as complex individuals rather than just obstacles or allies. A few weeks later, I saw the moving truck in front of Patricia and Gerald's house. I walked over to say goodbye. Patricia was supervising the movers, directing them with the same intensity she had once brought to HOA enforcement, though now it was focused on making sure her furniture did not get scratched. "William," she said when she saw me approach, "I was hoping I would get to see you before we left. Robert told me you were moving. Arizona, right?" "Yes, Scottsdale. Gerald got a job opportunity out there, and we decided it was time for a fresh start. New place, new people, new us. I think that is great. I hope it goes well for you." She smiled, and it was genuine, reaching her eyes in a way I had never seen before. "Thank you, and thank you for everything else, for not making things worse when you could have, for letting me apologize, for being a good person when I was not. We all make mistakes, Patricia. What matters is that you recognized yours and tried to fix them. I did a lot of damage, to you, to Amanda Foster, to others. I have been reaching out, making amends where I can. It has been humbling but necessary." Gerald came out of the house carrying a box. He nodded at me. "William. Good to see you." "You too, Gerald. Good luck with the move." "Thanks. I think this is going to be really good for us." I helped them load a few more boxes, then stepped back as the moving truck pulled away. Patricia and Gerald got into their car, and she rolled down her window one last time. "Take care of this neighborhood," she said. "And do not let the HOA turn into what I made it. Keep it about community, not control." "I will," I promised. I watched them drive away, disappearing around the corner and out of my life. It was a strange ending to a strange chapter. The woman who had once called the police on me for shoveling snow was now someone I felt compassion for, someone I hoped would find peace in her new life. That evening, I sat on my front porch again, beer in hand, watching the neighborhood wind down for the night. Kids were being called inside, porch lights were flickering on, and the smell of dinner cooking wafted through the air. This was home. Not perfect, not without its challenges, but home nonetheless. The next winter, when the snow fell and I grabbed my shovel at 7 in the morning, I did so without any fear or anxiety. The scrape of metal on concrete was just a sound, a necessary part of winter life in South Dakota. No one would call the police. No one would threaten me with fines. I was free to take care of my property in peace. As I shoveled, I thought about how far things had come. From that first confrontation with Patricia to the police showing up to her resignation to the lawsuit to her ultimate departure, it had been a journey. But I had come through it stronger, more connected to my community, and with a clearer understanding of my rights and responsibilities as a homeowner. Robert stopped by later that week to drop off some HOA paperwork for me to review before the next board meeting. We stood in my driveway, chatting about upcoming projects and neighborhood concerns. "You know," he said, "I was thinking about your situation with Patricia. The whole snow shoveling thing, it has kind of become legendary in the neighborhood." I laughed. "Really?" "Yeah, new residents ask about it." "Is this the neighborhood where someone called the cops over snow shoveling? It is become part of our history." "I am not sure if I should be proud or embarrassed about that." "Be proud. You stood up to an abuse of power and you did it the right way. You followed the rules, documented everything, and let the system work. That is what more people should do." "I had good advice," I said, thinking of Marcus and his legal guidance, "and you had the courage to follow it." A lot of people would have just paid the fine and stayed quiet, even though they knew it was wrong. After Robert left, I went inside and found the original fine letter Patricia had sent me. I had kept it, along with all the other documentation, in a file folder in my office. Looking at it now, it seemed like a relic from another era. The angry, threatening tone, the baseless accusations, the overreach of authority. It was hard to believe this had all happened over something as simple as clearing snow from my driveway, but it had happened, and it had mattered. Not just for me, but for Amanda Foster and probably for others I did not even know about. Standing up to Patricia had helped break a cycle of harassment and had led to real changes in how the HOA operated. I filed the letter away again, this time with a sense of finality. That chapter was closed. The neighborhood had moved on, Patricia had moved on, and so had I. Months passed, and then years. I remained on the HOA board, working with Robert and the others to make the neighborhood a better place. We updated outdated rules, streamlined the approval process for home improvements, and focused on building community rather than enforcing arbitrary standards. We organized block parties, holiday lights contests, and neighborhood watch meetings. People actually wanted to attend HOA meetings now because they were productive and positive rather than confrontational. Allison and I got married in a small ceremony at the community center, surrounded by our neighbors and friends. It felt fitting to celebrate in the heart of the neighborhood that had become such an important part of my life. Robert officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. Even the story of how Allison and I met had become part of neighborhood lore, another positive outcome from the changes that had swept through after Patricia's departure. One winter morning, 5 years after that first incident, I was once again outside shoveling snow at 7. My technique had improved over the years, and I had invested in a better shovel with an ergonomic handle. The work went faster now, and my back did not ache as much. As I shoveled, I thought about how much had changed. The houses around me had turned over, new families moving in as others moved out. But the culture of the neighborhood remained positive and welcoming. New residents would comment on how friendly everyone was, how well-maintained the common areas were, how responsive the HOA board was to concerns. I thought about Patricia sometimes, wondering how she was doing in Arizona. I had no way of knowing if she had truly changed or if she had just moved her problems to a new location. But I chose to believe the best. I chose to believe that people could grow and learn from their mistakes, that even someone who had caused real harm could become better. The sun was fully up now, and I was nearly done with the driveway. My neighbor across the street, a young guy named Wilson Wright who had moved in a year ago, was just coming out with his own shovel. "Morning, William," he called out. "Got an early start, I see." "Only way to do it," I replied. "Got to get it done before work." I heard a crazy story about this neighborhood and snow shoveling, Wilson said as he started on his own driveway. Something about the old HOA president calling the cops, I laughed. That was me, actually, about 5 years ago. His eyes widened. No way. What happened? I gave him the short version, hitting the main points. He listened with growing amazement. That is insane, he said when I finished. I cannot imagine dealing with that, but it sounds like you handled it perfectly. I just did what I had to do. Knew my rights, stood my ground, and let the system work. Still, that takes guts. A lot of people would have just given in. Maybe. But I learned that when you are in the right, it is worth fighting for. Not in an aggressive way, but in a persistent, documented by the book way. That is how you win against people who abuse their power. We chatted for a few more minutes before returning to our shoveling. As I worked, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was my neighborhood, my community, my home. I had fought for my place here and I had won. Not through aggression or revenge, but through patience, documentation, and a commitment to doing things the right way. When I finished shoveling, I stood at the end of my driveway and looked at the house I had worked so hard to make a home. The blue front door that Patricia had once complained about, the mailbox that had sparked one of her letters, the yard that I had filled with flowers and maintained with care. Every inch of this property represented something I had built and protected. The snow had stopped falling and the sky was clearing. It was going to be a beautiful winter day. I took a deep breath of the cold, crisp air and smiled. Life was good. The battle with Patricia and the HOA felt like ancient history now, a story I told at parties rather than a source of stress. I went inside, stomped the snow off my boots, and started getting ready for work. As I poured my coffee, I heard my phone buzz. It was a text from Robert. Board meeting tonight at 7. See you there. Absolutely, I texted back. Wouldn't miss it. Because that was the thing about community. It required participation, engagement, and sometimes standing up for what was right. But when you got it right, when you built something real with your neighbors, it was worth every bit of effort. The rest of the day passed normally. Work was busy but manageable. I grabbed lunch with a colleague, reviewed some project proposals, and left the office at 5. The drive home was peaceful, the roads clear from the morning's snow removal efforts. The board meeting that night was productive. We discussed plans for spring landscaping in the common areas, reviewed the budget, and addressed a few minor concerns from residents. Everything was handled professionally and efficiently. This was what an HOA was supposed to be, I thought. A tool for making the community better, not a weapon for enforcing personal preferences. After the meeting, Robert pulled me aside. I wanted to give you a heads up about something. I got an email today from Patricia Henderson. My heart skipped a beat. Really? What did she say? She wanted to know how the neighborhood was doing. Asked about specific families, whether the community garden was still thriving, things like that. She sounded genuinely interested, not in a controlling way, but in a nostalgic way. Did you respond? I did. I gave her a brief update, kept it positive. She wrote back and said she was glad things were going well. She also mentioned that she has been volunteering with a community mediation center in Scottsdale, helping resolve disputes between neighbors and HOAs. Wow. That is actually pretty perfect for her. That is what I thought. She is taking her experience, both good and bad, and using it to help others. I thought you would want to know. Thanks for telling me. I am glad she found something meaningful. As I drove home that night, I thought about the full circle Patricia's journey had taken. From HOA tyrant to self-reflection to helping others navigate similar conflicts. It was a redemption arc I had not seen coming, but one that made sense. Sometimes our biggest mistakes become our greatest teachers. The years continued to pass. My career advanced, and I took on more responsibility at work. Allison and I welcomed our first child, a daughter we named Emma. The neighborhood rallied around us, bringing meals, offering babysitting help, and celebrating with us. This was community at its best, and I was grateful every day to be part of it. When Emma was old enough to play outside, she would run around with the other neighborhood kids, riding bikes and playing games in the street. I would watch from my porch, the same porch where I had sat so many times over the years, processing everything that had happened with Patricia and the HOA. One summer evening, when Emma was about 4 years old, she came running up to me with a question. "Daddy, what is an HOA?" I had to think about how to explain it to a 4-year-old. It is a group of neighbors who work together to keep the neighborhood nice. They make sure the parks are clean, the trees are healthy, and everyone follows the rules that help us all get along. Are you in the HOA? I am. I help make decisions about the neighborhood. Is it fun? I laughed. Sometimes. It is important work, making sure everyone in the neighborhood is treated fairly and that we all work together. She seemed satisfied with that answer and ran off to play. As I watched her go, I thought about how different things could have been. If I had not stood up to Patricia, if I had just paid that first fine and stayed quiet, the culture of harassment might have continued. Other families might have been driven out. The neighborhood might have become a place of fear and resentment rather than community and cooperation. But I had stood up. I had known my rights, documented everything, and let the system work. And because of that, my daughter was growing up in a neighborhood where the HOA served the community rather than oppressing it. That winter, when Emma watched me shovel snow for the first time, she asked why I was doing it so early in the morning. "Because it needs to be done, sweetie," I told her, "and this is the best time to do it before I have to go to work." "But it is so cold," she protested. "It is. But sometimes we do things that are hard or uncomfortable because they need to be done. That is part of being responsible." She nodded solemnly, taking in this life lesson. I did not tell her about Patricia, or the police being called, or any of the drama that had once surrounded this simple act of snow removal. That story could wait until she was older, when she could appreciate the lessons it contained about standing up for yourself and working within systems to create change. As I finished the driveway that morning, I took a moment to appreciate everything I had. A home I loved, a family I cherished, a community I was proud to be part of. The journey to get here had not been smooth, but it had been worth it. The neighborhood continued to thrive under good leadership. Robert eventually stepped down as president and Susan Miller took over. I remained on the board, contributing where I could but also stepping back to focus on my growing family. We had a son, Michael, 2 years after Emma, and suddenly our lives were wonderfully chaotic with 2 young children. Through it all, the neighborhood remained a constant source of support. When Allison's mother passed away, neighbors brought food and offered condolences. When I was promoted to a senior management position at work, they threw a celebration at the community center. When Emma started kindergarten, other parents with older kids offered advice and encouragement. This was what I had been fighting for all those years ago when Patricia had threatened me over shoveling snow. Not just the right to clear my driveway in peace, but the right to live in a community governed by fairness and reason, rather than arbitrary power and personal vendettas. 10 years after that first incident, the neighborhood organized a special event, a 10-year anniversary celebration of the new HOA leadership. It was Robert's idea, a way to mark the positive changes that had transformed the community. The event was held at the community center on a Saturday afternoon in June. Nearly every household attended, including many who had moved in during the past decade and had never known the old regime. There was food, music, and activities for kids. Robert gave a speech thanking everyone who had contributed to making the neighborhood what it was. At one point, he called me up to the front. "Many of you know William Warner as a dedicated board member and a great neighbor," he said. "But what you might not know is that William played a crucial role in changing this community for the better. 10 years ago, he stood up to an abuse of power, documented everything carefully, and helped us realize that the HOA needed to change. His courage to fight for what was right, even when it was difficult, set us on the path we are on today." People applauded, and I felt embarrassed but also proud. I had not done it for recognition, but it was nice to have my contribution acknowledged. "I just did what anyone should do," I said when Robert handed me the microphone. "I knew my rights, I stood my ground, and I worked within the system to create change. That is all any of us can do when we face injustice. Document everything, stay calm, follow the rules, and trust that eventually fairness will win out." More applause. When I sat back down, Allison squeezed my hand. "I am proud of you," she whispered. Later that evening, after the celebration had wound down and we were back home getting the kids ready for bed, I found myself thinking about Patricia again. I wondered if she knew about the anniversary celebration, if Robert had mentioned it in any of their occasional emails. I wondered if she ever thought about those days, about the person she had been and the damage she had caused. But mostly, I hoped she was happy. I hoped she had found peace in Arizona, that her work with the mediation center was fulfilling, and that she and Gerald were doing well. People make mistakes, sometimes big ones, but they deserve the chance to learn and grow and become better. As I tucked Emma into bed that night, she asked me about the party. "Why did everyone clap for you, Daddy?" "Because a long time ago, I helped make the neighborhood a better place," I said. "How?" "I stood up for what was right, even when it was hard, and I helped change things so that everyone in the neighborhood would be treated fairly." "That is good," she said sleepily. "I like our neighborhood." "Me too, sweetie, me too." I turned out her light and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her drift off to sleep. This was why it had all mattered. Not for me, but for her and Michael and all the other kids growing up in this neighborhood. They deserved to live in a place governed by fairness and reason, where the rules made sense and were applied equally to everyone. The snow shoveling incident had been the catalyst, but the real story was about so much more. It was about standing up to bullies, working within systems to create change, and building communities based on mutual respect rather than fear and control. It was about recognizing that even our adversaries are human, capable of growth and redemption. And it was about the importance of documentation, persistence, and faith that justice will ultimately prevail. As I walked down the hallway to my own bedroom, I passed the office where that original fine letter still sat in its file folder. I should probably throw it away, I thought. It had been a decade, after all, but something made me keep it. It was a reminder of where we had been and how far we had come. It was proof that one person, armed with nothing more than the truth and a commitment to fairness, could make a real difference. Outside, snow began to fall again, the first flakes of what would be another South Dakota winter. In a few months, I would be out there with my shovel again, clearing my driveway at 7 in the morning. But this time, I would do it without any fear or anxiety, secure in the knowledge that I was within my rights and that my community supported me. That was worth fighting for. That was worth everything.